What is up, fantasy fans? As always, I'm Shay from the channel Zachary Shay, where I talk about mainly fantasy books, but also sometimes comic books, manga, and this is Getting Graphic, where I talk about different comic books that I think are good jumping on points for fans. Primarily, my subscribers are fantasy book readers, fans of epic fantasy, heroic fantasy, grimdark, sword and sorcery, mainly just the fantasy genre as a whole. I've been on a comic binge lately, and unlike manga, where it seems like a lot of fantasy booktube has kind of welcomed manga, comics is still seen as this kind of more obtuse medium, harder to get into, weird jumping on points. How do I get into it? So I'm in the series of Getting Graphic. I'm trying to bring you comics that are either extremely accessible and you don't need to read anything, or I can give you a little bit of supplemental information to kind of set you up for how to enjoy these really, really excellent series. And I'm covering a couple comics in this one, and this episode is going to be on The Fourth World by Jack Kirby. But we're also going to discuss Mr. Miracle by Tom King, which is my favorite comic of all time. The only place you could start with the Epic of the New Gods is with Jack Kirby's Fourth World. Now, do you need to read this massive murder weapon of a book? I mean, look at this. Look at this. This is insane. This collects... Okay. Let me bring it all the way back. So Jack Kirby, creator of Fantastic Four, along with Stan Lee, he was not getting credited for a lot of the characters he was creating at Marvel. A lot of the credit was going to Stan Lee, even though Jack Kirby was the one who drew them. And so he went to DC. He went to DC and he thought he was going to take over an editorial position, doing some writing, some artwork, but that he would mainly be overseeing other artists, other writers, as he created his little pocket within DC called The Fourth World. Well, he gets there, they put him on, Jack Kirby, big name coming from Marvel, they put him on the book Superman's best pal, Jimmy Olsen. And in that book, that's when he starts spinning his narrative of the Fourth World. This goes on to books like The Forever People. It goes on to books like Mr. Miracle and The New Gods. Do you need to read all of them to understand it? So, Superman interacts with the Forever People. A character by the name of Light Ray from New Gods is in a couple panels of Superman's best pal, Jimmy Olsen. But by and large, at least to understand the main focus of the narrative of the Fourth World, in my opinion, you only have to read New Gods and Mr. Miracle. And even then, there are some issues near the back end of Mr. Miracle where the Fourth World stuff wasn't doing great, so he tried to distance Mr. Miracle and just make it a regular superhero comic book for like 3 issues, and then he ended up leaving DC around that time, and he ties it back into the narrative of the Fourth World. But I would say read the entirety of The New Gods by Jack Kirby and Mr. Miracle by Jack Kirby, and then go on to Hunger Dogs, which is kind of the best you're going to get a conclusion to Jack Kirby's foray into the New Gods. So in these series, I mentioned Superman's best pal, Jimmy Olsen. You follow Jimmy Olsen, Superman, the Newsboy Legion, as they thwart some of the ploys of different minions of Darkseid, and we get the first introduction of Darkseid as a villain. Forever People, you again get Darkseid as that villain. You have his henchman Desaad, who's like this very like Lord Sidious looking sadist that worships Darkseid and tries to do his will. And the Forever People is sort of like an out of touch like look that Jack Kirby had at the youth. There's a lot of Kirbyisms in this book that are very out of touch, but I do think that they have a certain charm to them. He has a character in the New Gods, very unfortunately called the Black Racer, which several artists have tried to make him cool. And I'm looking at the new Ram V comics and I'm like, did he actually succeed in making the Black Racer cool? But I have to be honest here. If that is something you're going to be sensitive to, those older Jack Kirby comics, I don't think he was intentionally trying to be out of touch, but it's irrefutable. If you look at it by today's standards, it's pretty indefensible. I think there's a certain charm to that because Jack Kirby was not spewing hateful rhetoric. He calls out Hitler in this book. He talks about the danger of fascism, how it can take over different societies. He's very anti-Nazi, anti-communism, he's That's the thing about Jack Kirby. He has great ideas. He's very blunt in the execution. Some of these, he compares Darkseid to Hitler multiple times. He's not very subtle, but I do think his ideas are brilliant. I think the soul of his work is one of acceptance. It's one of love. It's one of perseverance. There's a lot of creators at the time, and you see this a lot with writers, right? There's a lot of writers that think that their ideas are what's king and the artists are the vessels for their ideas. Jack Kirby did not have this mentality, and it's because he himself is an artist. He believed in sharing his work, and he wanted other people to take on these characters, and he wanted that to happen, and he wanted to build a community. And honestly, Marvel and DC were not ready for the genius mind that was Jack Kirby. Some of these lines of dialogue, they are cringe by today's standards, but I still think that this story, the heart of this story, holds up. And I really wish we'd gotten a conclusion. We did get a sort of conclusion. In Hunger Dogs, we get that conclusion, but I wish we'd gotten a little bit more. Anyway, I'm rambling. So back to I discussed what the Forever People was about, and I discussed Superman's best pal, Jimmy Olsen. These two are kind of inconsequential to the main narrative here. We have the New Gods, which follows the son of Highfather, Orion, and then we follow Mr. Miracle, the world's greatest escape artist. And these two actually intertwine a little bit more than the rest. If you want absolutely no spoilers, I'm going to touch up on some stuff. So it is revealed in the New Gods that, from the very first issue, it hints that Orion may not hail entirely from New Genesis. He has a mother box that morphs his face to look more like New Gods and less like his face kind of has a similar appearance to Darkseid in ways, and it's hinting at the later reveal that Mr. Miracle and Orion were swapped at birth. Scot-free Orion swapped at birth. Mr. Miracle is actually the son of Highfather, the biological son of Highfather. Orion's the biological son of Tigress and Darkseid. Throughout New Gods, we see Orion take his missions from Highfather. We see Light Ray take his missions from Highfather. We see Orion go to Earth to battle with the forces that Darkseid has planted on Earth as Darkseid is pursuing the anti-life equation, which you can also see in Forever People. So there's a little bit of tie-in there. You constantly see Orion. He constantly has this internal struggle for bloodshed. He is definitely enticed by violence, enticed by a sense of vengeance that he kind of misconstrues within his own head as justice. But it definitely goes into more than just justice at times. You can definitely see that darker side of Orion and Light Ray to some extent. You get two very flawed characters, and they're written to be flawed. They overdo it. They kind of give in to the darker urges that the New Gods aren't supposed to have. And then you have Mr. Miracle. Mr. Miracle, to me, is the paragon of what a hero should be within the New God mythos. Mr. Miracle, while he doesn't have powers like the rest of the New Gods, he's a hero. I love Scot-free as a character. He is the one that will persevere. He is the one who escaped hell. He is, he has to be one of my favorite characters within the New Gods mythos. So throughout the story, we get his sort of relationship with Barda. We get him taking on the reins of I think his name was Thaddeus. The prior Mr. Miracle, he takes on that mantle. We start to get inklings of what his life was like on Apocalypse. We find out in an issue of the New Gods that Scot-free was switched for Orion as part of a hostage situation. Orion had to grow up on New Genesis, knowing he was a little bit different, using Mother Box to hide his face. But Scot-free, his own father, traded him with the devil to grow up in hell. And what sort of toll does that take on someone? We get the happy ending in the original Mr. Miracle comic book. He marries Barda. He goes off with the New Gods happily ever after. But Tom King takes that story up in Mr. Miracle. In my opinion, not only is it the greatest comic book ever written, it is one of the greatest works of fiction ever. Bar none, is one of the greatest works of fiction. What makes this work stand out, Tom King and Mitch Gerads are constantly paying homage to Jack Kirby's work with the character of Scot-free, while bringing him into a darker world, bringing him into our world, showing what it would be like if we took this paragon of virtue, this very noble character, and showed him what would he be like if he had to drudge it down here with us mortals. And I'll tell you, the story is inspiring. The first page So it gives a little recap of, what happened in New Gods and Mr. Miracle for new readers. So don't worry about like, oh, is this going to be accessible for me? It will be. It will be. From the second after that little recap, you get first page. Scott Free has slit his wrists. He has attempted to take his own life. The world's greatest escape artist couldn't escape his own depression. And you see Barda take him home from the hospital, and you see him go through daily life, struggling to just exist and to take up space within his home and to go on living. He is haunted by the things that happened to him on Apocalypse. In Jack Kirby's work, as much as Jack Kirby was a visionary and he wanted to explore trauma in certain ways, Tom King brings a level of raw realness to it that was missing from the original Mr. Miracle comic books. He is haunted, him and Barda both, but they are each other's strength. They both grew up on Apocalypse. They both have lived through things that they shouldn't, and they both get up every day and try their best. And they use this sort of Watchmen 9-panel grid. You can see it right here on, they're kind of paying homage in this Absolute Edition cover, but so much of the book is told in these 9 panels, right? You'll see Scott go about his day, and when something defeating happens, you see an all black panel with the words "Darkseid is." And that's supposed to show there is no hope. We live in a world where there is Darkseid. We live in a world where a man traded his own son to Darkseid to buy some sort of peace. There is no hope. Darkseid is. And as the pages go on, Darkseid is, it's only 1 panel out of the page. Then it's 2 panels out of the page until it's almost every single panel is Darkseid is. And then you get this all black page, Darkseid is. And you feel the weight of that trauma on Scott Free. And then you see that Barda is there for him. And, I won't spoil the rest of the comic. That's kind of just the setup for the narrative. But guys, I'm telling you that this is not something to sleep on. If you're worried like, oh, I'm not, most people when they get into comics, they want a character that they're familiar with. Oh, I grew up on Batman, I want to read Batman. I grew up on Superman, I want to read Superman. I'm not saying if you have some curiosity about DC, you should check this book out. I am saying if you want a story about the human condition, about what it means to persevere, what it means to overcome these traumas that you refuse to let them define you, you refuse to carry on a toxic cycle within your own family. If these sound like themes that will resonate with you, this story, this is the Absolute Edition, so it comes with like a bunch of little artwork. The actual paperback is like this thick. You could read it. It's like 200 pages. You could read it in 2 to 3 hours. And that's if you're taking time to look at all the artwork. If you're breezing through it, you probably wouldn't even take a full hour. All right. What is up, fantasy fans? So I'm back again because I recorded this video actually well before I moved into my new apartment, but then nursing school was so much, didn't have time to sit down and edit it. And I've actually read the 2 books I was going to talk about, Bug, The Adventures of Forager, and Orion by Walter Simonson. And so I'm going to start with this one, Bug, The Adventures of Forager. Great addition to the New Gods mythos. The all red art style is very iconic and fun. It's 10 out of 10 on the art. The story itself is more of like a 6 or a 7 for me. It's a solid story. It expands on the New Gods mythos. There's some fun references. It's not one that I would recommend to people who are not big fans of New Gods. But I also read Orion by Walter Simonson, and this is a masterpiece of a book. So Walter Simonson, very famous for his monumental run on Thor, the God of Thunder. He's also a big fan of the King, Jack Kirby. He echoes the style of Jack Kirby while instilling a lot of his own stylistic approaches to the art and to the writing. And in terms of pure writing ability, Walter Simonson, in my opinion, does eclipse Jack Kirby. Maybe not in imagination, but in terms of the written word and how that translates into the paneling and into the action sequences, I think Walter Simonson is he's a smart guy, and his writing is very intelligent, and there's a lot of thematic depth to this. It's a very good series. In my opinion, one of the best sequels to Jack Kirby's tenure on the New Gods. This tackles a lot of destiny, free will, amazing characterization of both Orion and Scott Free as Mr. Miracle and Darkseid, and many other characters within the New Gods mythos are brought to life in an excellent fashion here. In fact, for fans of Name of the Wind, there's a scene in a sort of underworld with a tree in the second half of this run that reminded me so much of Kavoth's interaction with the Cathay. It was just very ethereal and horrific in an eldritch sort of way. Really loved it. So since I read those two, I'm going to recommend, or I'm not recommend, but I'm going to talk about some other New Gods inspired books that I hope to get to. So Danger Street by the legend Tom King. This tackles a bunch of Jack Kirby characters. You've got a lot of different Jack Kirby characters and New Gods. And yep, excited to get to that. Cosmic Odyssey by Jim Starlin and Mike Mignola. Mike Mignola, the author and artist of the Hellboy universe. This is a sort of Justice League meets New Gods team up from 1989, I believe. And then I also want to tackle Grant Morrison's Seven Soldiers, which includes one of the Seven Soldiers is Scott Free, Mr. Miracle. And this leads right into Final Crisis, which is a big event comic. Darkseid and the New Gods take center stage. It's sort of a murder mystery whodunit for a dead new god. And I have not read those. I will be reading them soon. And thanks, guys. Peace.